皆さん、こんにちは。ニックです。ニック英会話へようこそ。前回は、発音の話しましたんですね。今日は、発音じゃなくて、ちょっと文法について話しましょうと思ってました。なので、今は、一つのテーマずっと連続で話すことじゃなくて、とりあえず今はいろんな話をして、いろんなテーマについて、いろんなレベルもちょっと動画作ってみて、それだったら登録者とかも増やすことができるんじゃないかと思ってますので、ちょっと最初の方は、バラバラになってしまいますが、それで皆さんの、ご理解お願いします。よろしくお願いします。では始めよう。Alright, so our topic for today is going to be verbal adjectives. There are many adjectives in English that are based on a verb. That's why today's concept is called a verbal adjective. The main usage for this grammar is to highlight what a noun is doing or what other things are doing to that noun. A smiling baby, a destroyed city, a baked pie, an inspiring message. Of course, if you wanted to, you could keep these verbs separate from the noun, not as an adjective, and make a separate individual sentence. The baby is smiling. The city was destroyed by Godzilla, for example. But if you want to keep that information together with that noun and keep it as a package, so you can use it with other information in the rest of your sentence, using a verbal adjective will make your sentence much more efficient. Also, it's really great if you want to use that information to identify which item you're talking about. The inspiring message was sent to all the teens. This is not a baked apple pie, this is a fried apple pie. Great. So I'm sure you've noticed in these examples that we have two varieties, two flavors of verbal adjectives. Some of them end with the letters ing, and some end with the letters ed. To describe the difference, first, let's go back to middle school where everybody learned that phrase SVO. 出た SVO 嫌いなやつだね。もう意味わかんないんだけど。懐かしいだよね。ちょっとレビューしましょうか。S means subject, your 主語。Your V means verb, 動詞。And your O means your object, 目的語。This basically just means what is the topic of your sentence, and at the same time, what is the noun that is performing the action, and what's your action? And finally, what is the item that receives the action? In some cases, the object may be not important or it's not known, so you can skip it in some situations. The man ate lunch. The man ate. If your verb ends with the letters ing, this can help show that the subject of your verb is actively doing this action. This concept will also apply to verbal adjectives. ing in a verbal adjective will show you that the noun, which the adjective is describing, is performing that action on which the verbal adjective is built. The eating man. This is not a full sentence, but as I described earlier, now it's a separate individual package that you can use as part of a different sentence. This noun phrase can be used as a different S or O for a different sentence. The eating man is late. Get back to work, man. Bonus information number 1. For the sake of building these adjectives, it's simpler to use a verb that doesn't require an object. That's not to say that it's impossible to make one with an object built in, It's just a little bit more complicated. If you really want to do this, what you need is a hyphen between your object and the verb. The object was before. So for example, you could say a man-eating monster lives in this forest. So in this case, it would be that the monster is your item that you're describing. Eating is what it does, and what does it eat? It eats humans. So, sorry, a little bit of a scary example, but you can build an object into your verbal adjective if you really wanted to. Bonus information number 1, complete. Those were the verbal adjectives that ended in ing. How about the ones that end in ed? Well, going back to the SVO topic, ed can often be used for what's called a passive voice. Passive just means you take your S and your O and you switch them. Your old O is now the topic of your sentence, but it's still the noun which receives the action. This same concept will apply to verbal adjectives. So, if you have a verbal adjective that ends in ed, this will show that the noun, which it's tied to, is receiving the action. It's not performing it. The typed report was easy to read. In this case, report is not doing the action of typing, it receives the action of typing. It'll be, a coworker that does the typing, not the report. Great! That's the main concept. Verbal adjectives will end in ing if the noun is performing the action. The verbal adjectives will end in ed if it receives the action. ing gives, ed gets. Let's practice then. Our first word will be the word surprise. If you want to describe the word a man with surprise, what's the best way to do that? Well, let's take a look at the first example. First of all, you need to... Okay, sorry to scare you, but it's for the example. In this case, a man is surprising or surprised. Did the man give the surprise feeling or did the man get the surprise feeling? Take a minute, please vote, think about it. If you chose ing, you are correct. Give yourself a pat on the back. If you chose ed, that's okay. Rewind the video, try again one more time. I'm sure you'll get it right the next time. Bonus information number 2. You cannot use a proper noun when using a verbal adjective to differentiate between other nouns. Proper nouns, by definition, are unique. There's only one of them. So it doesn't make sense to try to explain the difference between multiples of the only item that exists. The jumping Nick. There's only one Nick, so we can't do that. That doesn't make sense. Bonus number 2, complete. Okay, let's finish up with some points of caution. 出た。もうほら、いつもと例外があるんじゃないですか。はい、いつも例外があります。きっとこれから全ての動画はこのフレーズで絶対に出てきますので、もう期待していいですよ。Your success in using this grammar will depend on your knowledge of the verbs that you're using. So here are 3 points to look out for. Number 1, not all verbs work in the same direction. Here's a really good example. The words complicate and confuse. Here are 2 sample sentences. The test was complicated and the test was confusing. Overall, the meaning is basically the same, but these verbs don't work in the same direction. Complicate means to make something difficult. Confuse means make someone not understand. So even though these 2 sentences have a similar meaning, one is using ed, the other one is using ing. That's because with complicate, the test is not the one performing the action of complicate. The performer would be like the person who wrote the test. they made the test difficult, right? Same thing with confuse. Confuse in this case, it's the test that confuses you, the student who is taking that test. So be careful about the direction in which those verbs work. Point number 2, not all ED adjectives will actually end in ED. You need to use what's called the past participle, 格分詞。格分詞マジで嫌い。もう本当に嫌い。落ち着いて。大丈夫です。本当に大丈夫です。はい。格分詞も多分その単語を聞くと懐かしいなと思ってるかもしれないですけど、まあ良かったのは、これは例外ですので、全てと 100% 覚えること必要はないので大丈夫です。たまに出てます。Some examples of some past participles. For the past tense of catch, we don't say catched with an ed. Instead, we'll say caught. So, same thing is if you want to use catch as a verbal adjective, please use caught, not catched. The last point to be careful about is similar, ing. We will not always use ing for the active version as well. For example, the word scare is a verb. Don't worry, I won't I won't scare you again. I already did that with surprise. I promise. With the word scare, if you're using it as a regular adjective, we won't use ing. Instead, we'll use the letter y. Scary. You can use scaring if you're trying to use it as an adjective to identify multiple items again. Scary is a more common adjective to use. Okay, and that's it. That's the end of lesson number 2. I hope you had some useful information in here, and I hope that you had a good time. Of course, if you have questions, parts of this lesson maybe were confusing, but if you have suggestions and comments, please let me know. That's the end of the video. Thank you very much for watching. See you guys next time. Bye-bye.